So, the common goal of cell and gene therapy researchers, clinicians, industry, and regulators is to translate cell and gene therapies into safe and effective options to improve patients' lives. However, this must be done with the proper oversight and balance to ensure that this is accomplished in a practical, ethical, scientific, and clinical evidence based manner. And so, if any of you in our audience have ever attended a Cell and Gene Live event before, you know that I like to start off by level setting the conversation around the topic. And today we're going to do just that. So, Adora, I'd like to start with you, please. What do you feel are the main opportunities where the cell and gene therapy industry is working to meet regulatory requirements?
Sure. So thank you, Erin, for inviting me to join this webinar today. As far as opportunities are concerned, I want to take a few steps back just to acknowledge quite a bit of work that has taken place over the last several years, both by industry and academia, but then also by CBER, just sort of being responsive to the evolution, the needs of the industry as a whole, the needs of patients. And so, because you have to remember, within the last few years, there's been a bit of an explosion in development in regenerative medicine. And under the guidance of Peter Marks, CBER has been understaffed. And then you throw in COVID and you throw in a sort of outdated regulatory framework. So they've been dealt some difficult cards there to keep up with. And so, as I think about opportunities, I do want to acknowledge the progress that has been made over the years before diving into the opportunities. One area that I would highlight as an opportunity area that could potentially make a big difference is how we are leveraging RMAT, the Regenerative Medicines Advanced Therapies designation, which has been put in place to help support accelerated and expedited development of regenerative medicines, which include cell and gene therapies. And so increasing clarity around the requirements to qualify for that RMAT designation will be extremely helpful for the industry as a whole. Just as a reminder, the RMAT designation establishes that preliminary clinical evidence has suggested that there's a potential to address unmet medical needs for serious diseases. And so products that have this designation should benefit from increased flexibility, additional conversations and discussions with CBER leadership to really explore things like clinical trial design, approaches to expediting approval, et cetera, and then getting that close guidance from FDA leadership. One of the reasons I say that there's an opportunity here is because when you take a step back and look at RMAT over the years, you start to see that, you start to ask that question of, are we leveraging it as it was intended? And are we using it to its fullest potential? So back in May 2022, my colleagues and I published an article in Molecular Therapy where we reflected on the 5 years since the enactment of the implementation of RMAT. And what we found was that within the 5 years of RMAT going into effect, only 3 RMAT products had actually been approved, compared to when you look at the similar designation, breakthrough therapy designation, 94 products were approved in the first 5 years. And so just that sort of black and white comparison, you ask yourself, are there opportunities? Are we missing anything here? Similarly, the RMAT denials within that time frame continue to outpace the RMAT approvals as well. So it just leads to a question for us to really think about: what are some of the barriers here? What are some of the opportunity areas here? What can we do, working with FDA so that we provide them the opportunity to clarify specifically what it takes to actually gain that designation for specific products? And how we get that clarification, whether it be through FDA workshops, whether it be through opportunities for a 15-minute pre-meeting that currently is in place for the Breakthrough Therapy Designation Program. I mean, just to give you some perspective, being able to actually have a pre-meeting to discuss whether your product, based on the data that you have so far, would qualify, would save a significant amount of time, both from sponsors as well as FDA. On our end, it saves us the time from actually pulling together an RMAT application prematurely And it saves the agency time from having to review countless RMAT designation requests that aren't at the right stage of submission. So I'll stop there. I know I've talked for several minutes now, but I think that that's an area that I would love to see us coalesce around and think through how to really make this a more efficient, a clearer process, the threshold being clearer, and really providing that opportunity to actually support the development and expedite the development of these products forward.
Thank you, Adora. And everything you just said it makes perfect sense. And speaking of CBER, which you mentioned at the top, I just did a podcast with Dr. Marks for Cell and Gene, the podcast, and he reiterated and talked a lot about what you just mentioned here. So we'll get to a lot of that even further in our discussion, but I really appreciate the information. Nina, I'd love to hear the same thing from you. What do you feel the main opportunities where cell and gene therapy, where the industry is working to meet regulatory requirements?
Sure, thank you. And also thank you, Erin, for having me here, and happy to be here with Adora as well. And just to add a little bit to what Adora just said, I think what does success look like for RMAT is something that we're looking for. And so sort of setting that bar and having a better understanding and that clarity around the requirements is something that, as you all highlighted, we are hoping will come in the near future. In addition, just thinking about it in a different way, I think the cell and gene therapy field has the opportunity to address the root cause of many diseases, and that is incredibly exciting, right? With the rapid advancement of science, and I'm speaking very broadly for gene therapy, it offers new and unique approaches to treating previously intractable diseases. So rather than treating disease symptoms, gene therapy can address the root cause of genetic disease by modifying expression of a patient's genes or by repairing or replacing abnormal genes. And there are obviously many different ways towards this. So navigating the regulatory requirements around this is very important. And obviously it depends on the disease and the considerations around benefit risk profile, the mechanism of action, route of administration, dose, and other important factors. And so I think having clarity there and more precedence there will be very important to look for in the near future. And then also thinking about the aim of gene therapy to be a potential one-time therapeutic intervention, right? So in other words, like what is durability and what is that bar and how does it fit for specific diseases? And that, again, depends on your target cell types, your route, and overall profile again. So in terms of regulatory considerations, it's not possible to make general policy across the spectrum. So it's even more important for these novel areas to leverage broad collaboration and engagement to address these challenges, to really, if possible, to efficiently get towards realizing the full potential of these therapies and provide patient access.